Jamaican-inspired curry goat recipe using beef. That's a mouthful, isn't it? The result of which makes your mouth dance with delight. In cooking, do you know when you've made something really good? No leftovers. By the way, have you noticed that really good cooks don't use exact amounts of anything? It's a pinch of this, a dash of that, a sprinkle of that. Anyway, this is a really simple recipe in 4 parts. So simple in fact that I can tell you all about it right now. Part 1, note that I'm using beef since I did not have goat meat, but the same principles would apply anyway, just a change in time for cooking the meat. Anyway, part 1, cut your meat in small pieces and marinate for at least an hour. Your marinade consists of black pepper, curry powder, onions, tomatoes, garlic, scallion, and my all-time favorite for Jamaican recipes, Scotch bonnet pepper. That's a hot one that deserves your respect. While my meat is marinating, I would like you to entertain yourself by watching Mr. and Mrs. Finch, and while you're doing that, I'll answer a few questions that I have received via email. Lately, I've been using a Canon T1i. I also enjoy using the Panasonic pocket camera, that is DMC ZS3. The food is the star, so I use a single 100-watt fluorescent daylight bulb over the stove. Daylight, because it only uses maybe 15 to 20, maybe 25 watts. And you know, it's one of those curly bulbs, except I use the daylight version. I am not sure that you want to learn to cook as I do, and I'll tell you why. Because cooking is a very personal thing. Besides, I have only 3 basic rules. First of all, my guide in cooking is how long it takes to cook that particular food. In other words, how long is it going to make that particular food palatable? For example, I know that it's going to take approximately an hour to cook chicken, so all of my chicken is cooked for about an hour. If I'm going to bake it, for example, I know it's going to take, I bake at 350 degrees for about an hour. If I'm going to add potatoes to my dish, I know it takes about 20 minutes to cook potatoes, so I add it the last 20 minutes. You see what I mean? Secondly, I know that cooking is the last great and most enjoyable way that one can safely be as creative as he or she wishes. And I'm very big on creativity in cooking. Taste is personal. Restaurants overcome that by using a lot of salt in their dinner, because that'll hide anything. Finally, there are no absolutes as far as my recipes are concerned. When you look at my recipes, I consider it a compliment if you, in seeing how I cooked, say to yourself, wow, I can do better than that. Then I've done my job, which is to get you excited enough about trying your hand at cooking something. See my point? Part 2. After your meat is marinated for at least an hour, separate the seasoning from the meat, and then A. Brown your meat in oil and butter. B. After your meat is nice and brown, add enough boiling water to cover your meat completely. And C. Cook your meat until tender. As you might have noticed, I did set my timer to about an hour, but I would keep checking it often to make sure it is nice and tender. Part 3. After your meat is nice and tender, add all your seasoning, that is, your marinade, to your pot. I happen to like potatoes, so 20 minutes before serving, I added bite-sized pieces of potatoes. Be creative and add whatever you like. How about some spinners? Anyway, part 4, once you have added your marinade to your pot, all you need to do then is to cook it for an additional 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and that's it. And before I go on, let me say, you'll probably have no leftovers.